I actually have a name. My name is not pastor's wife. My name is not cop's wife. I actually have a name. Who am I apart from my husband? Who am I apart from these titles that people give? Do you struggle with past hurt? Do you feel like no matter how hard you try to move forward, you get pulled back into the same place, feeling lost, out of control, and unable to make decisions? Do you want stronger faith and to feel more confident in your identity? If so, you're in the right place. Hey, we're Kristen, Abbi, and Lydia, Christians, life coaches, and motivational speakers. We've learned that healing, confidence, and identity are found through truth. If you're ready to explore faith, find a new sense of self-worth, and gain freedom from the past, grab your spiritual armor, a cup of strong coffee, and join us in reclaiming your identity in Christ.
Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt like a stranger was looking back at you? Do you ever feel lost or disconnected from your life? Well, hi, I'm Abbi DeWitt, and welcome to Reclaiming Identity. This is actually our first ever podcast episode, and we are so glad that you're here. This podcast is meant to help you receive the tools to heal your relationships with God, others, and yourself so that you'll have stronger faith, more confidence, and be able to live life more balanced. And we are made up of a team of life coaches, trained mentors, authors, and speakers. So we are very excited. Our team is from our business called the Abbi Project, which I'll have Kristen tell us a little bit more about here in a minute. But we have actually designed tools over the years to help people walk out their identity in Christ. And we're talking about practical step tools because we're all about getting right into it and avoiding the vague language. No, let's learn how to fully do this and really equip people. So we're very excited. Today we have Kristen Zuray with us. Now, Kristen, you're actually the founder of the Abbi Project. Can you tell me a little bit more? What is the Abbi Project about?
Sure. The Abbi Project, we're about liberating the broken by validating their identity in Christ. And I grew up hearing the terminology of identity in Christ, but I never really understood it completely, what it really meant, until just going through my own life's journey and then realizing that, wow, it plays such a vital role in my life, and it plays a healing role in life as well. And it's that compass, but so many people just don't even think of it as a compass. And so I wanted to dive into that. What did that really mean? And from that, we began developing coaching techniques to help people discover their real identity, their God-given identity, and helping them to reestablish their faith or even come to know faith, just working through that and developing a coaching team and our own resources as well. Books, we've written books. Yep. The two of us have co-authored some books, and just developing a system to be able to help people discover and reclaim their identity.
Which has been such a fun ride and a fun journey that we've come on. Now, our whole team has actually gone through our own identity struggles, and we've all worked to overcome those. So, Kristen, has there been a time in your life that you can specifically think of where you faced an identity struggle?
Oh, yes. There's been a lot of them, but there was a big transition in my life. I grew up and my mindset was I really wanted to go into ministry, and I wanted to marry someone who was also going into ministry. And sure enough, I ended up meeting someone at Bible college, fell in love, and he was going to become a pastor. He was studying Bible. Oh, wow. So I was really excited about that, and my whole thing was becoming a pastor's wife. So the denomination that I was in, there was no male-female co-pastoring, as a lot of these evangelical churches do. And it was more, you were titled the pastor's wife. Oh, wow. And so that was always like an honor to be the pastor's wife, right? So we got married, and for 7 years he was a youth pastor, so I was the youth pastor's wife. And then we changed into planting a church. We moved, so we were church planners, and then he was the senior pastor, of course. So that's when I became, the pastor's wife. So the two of us, my husband and I, we worked really closely together in ministries, developing programs and things like that. And it was great being able to develop those things. But then 10 years into it, my husband both of us decided that we don't really actually feel like this is what we're supposed to be called to. We're supposed to be called to like ministry work. We haven't given that up, but to actually be a pastor of a church, well, I don't know about that. And our beliefs had begun to change. We were no longer fitting into the denominational mold. So that was causing a lot of conflict. And so we decided that we were going to just step back and resign. And he resigned. And in the meantime there, at the end, we had begun bringing coffee and donuts to some kids or young adults on a trail that were drug addicts. They were involved in prostitution, and we got a real burden for them. And we began bringing the coffee and donuts and hanging out with them. And God just put that desire on our hearts, like, this is where I want you to be. I want you to be with them.
Yeah.
And so for the last year of being in the church ministry, we were trying to figure out, how do we combine both together? And it became very clear and evident that we could not combine both together, that we had to make a choice. So we decided to resign from the church and move forward with, working with the kids on the trail. But that didn't pay the bills. So my husband became a law enforcement officer. And it was kind of funny because he went from that, and then all of a sudden went from pastor's wife to now a cop's wife. And I don't know why this is in these two worlds where the woman is always defined by their husband's jobs. But that's what it was. The pastor's family, the cop's family. It was weird. But it was really hard because growing up, that was my dream of being a pastor's wife and being in full-time ministry. And now that was gone, and now God is calling me into a world that I knew nothing about. I didn't know anything about the drug world. I didn't know anything about the nonprofit world or law enforcement. I had no clue. It was definitely an identity crisis there. It was just like, well, who am I now that I'm not what I always thought I would be? That was really hard.
Yeah, wow. Because you have that transition of going, oh, wait, I am a pastor's wife. And then even that battle, I do remember watching you in that time as you're my mom. I watched both of you guys at home. You never acted as pastor's wife. Like, it was always very equal. I remember Dad would turn your birthday or Mother's Day into like a huge holiday in our family, and we'd go on trips to celebrate you. And so I remember watching you be so valued at home and in your marriage and the way that you would pastor together. But then there was that wait, as soon as we leave our house and go into this denomination that is more legalistic, then I remember watching all the polls that, oh wait, now everybody else is treating you like just a woman who is standing next to her husband, not supporting her husband like you were, and watching those. And then watching, you talked about that transition from breaking out of the identity behind the more legalistic denomination and expecting, I'll be free of this, and then getting put back into that again in a different way.
Exactly, because in that denomination, I was stripped of an identity, right? And I lived under my husband's shadow, and it was hard and it was difficult, and especially when people within that denomination just didn't respect give the same respect to the pastor's wife as they did the pastor. And it was very difficult. And then when one day it just dawned on me that, wait a minute, I actually have a name. You know, my name is not pastor's wife. My name is not cop's wife. I actually have a name. And it's like, goodness sakes, what is that name? You know?
Wow, yeah.
What is that name? What does that name even stand for? You know, and who am I apart from my husband? Who am I apart from these titles that people give?
Oh, wow.
And that was a real challenge, trying to find the answer to that question, because I realized I had no clue who I was. I didn't know what my dreams were, because, anyways, long story, but, you know, we just weren't allowed to have dreams in this denomination. We just, I didn't know what my likes, dislikes were. Nothing. I just really didn't know who I was. And who I thought I was, everyone put down around me. And so who I thought I was actually rejected by these people. And so it was very difficult. So I thought that person who actually God made me to be, I thought that person was a bad person. And I had to cover her up, and I had to hide and not live out my giftings because I was told that I wasn't allowed to.
Wow.
So it was very difficult.
Yeah, and that reminds me of that verse where Paul talks about living out your giftings boldly. But if you're in a denomination that already comes into conflict with who God is and how he designed men and women, no wonder you were put in a position where you couldn't live out your giftings boldly.
Yeah, definitely could not do that.
So who did you find that you were?
Well, it was very interesting, because when my husband changed direction from helping with the nonprofit, I took the lead for the nonprofit, and all of a sudden I discovered that I was actually an entrepreneur. I mean,
wow.
I had no idea that, and I was allowed to dream. Oh my goodness, it was so much fun. I was allowed to dream of all these different possibilities. I was allowed to organize. I was allowed to actually speak in the community, and people were listening, and they were following, and they were accepting. I received more validation and affirmation within the community and within the drug community, actually, than I ever did in the church, in that denomination. And so it took them to be able to show me who I really was. And it was that entrepreneur person, fearless, going out on the trails. And I mean, even the cops were like, "Kristen, please don't do this. This is dangerous." And I'm just like, you know.
Yes, you're like, wait, Joshua 1:9, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. You're like, I'm just obeying God. Okay.
Exactly.
Going out on the trail.
It was just so much fun. It was like all these shackles fell off, and I was a toddler exploring my new world and trying all of these cool new things, you know. And then eventually we opened up the coffee home, the nonprofit, and then it was just like, oh, well, you know what, we want to make it sustainable so we don't have to rely upon a lot of grants. Well, guess what we're going to do? I know nothing about it, but we're going to roast coffee. And we got our own coffee roaster. And it was just fun to be able to have that space to explore and realize for the first time in my life what God had planted inside of me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like walking out of that bad environment with the support of your family as well, and being able to transition into, I'm going to finally walk in how God fully designed me. You got to go out in boldness and share the gospel with the youth and young adults that were on the trails, and got to watch God move in people's lives who had been addicted to drugs for a long time. And you got to watch real fruit develop from your life and even live life. It's like that verse where Jesus says, like, I came so that you may have life and have it abundantly. And so you finally got to experience the abundantly when you walked out in your identity.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. There was definitely no abundance before. when I was not allowed to even know my identity. It was just day to day, doing the grind, living up to everyone else's expectations. And thankfully, like you said, I was in a fantastic marriage where my husband supported. And that's kind of one of the reasons why we're like, we actually don't belong in this denomination. This is not how, he treats me and how he sees me. And he just wants me to know who I am, and he also knew that I can't do that in this where we were.
Wow. Yeah. And you'd mentioned not like you weren't experiencing abundance in your life. What did that feel like? Like what symptoms of that were you having, before you came down to what the root of the problem was?
Just feeling very disconnected, feeling worthless, feeling lost, feeling very anxious because I felt like God had been putting things in my heart, but yet I wasn't allowed to do it.
Oh, wow.
And or I could only do it so much, and so it was very unfulfilling. And so then I also had resentment over the things that I was forced to do, but it didn't fit within my identity. Like there were a few times just to help make ends meet, I had to take a job of being an administrative assistant. And I really struggled with that.
No, I didn't connect those dots now. You were not administrative, which is
no
okay because you're entrepreneurial, but I did not think about that before, about how that would be.
It was torture. It was torture for me, and it was also torture for the poor person that I was being an assistant to. It was not my identity, and the funny thing is that when I took a career personality test, the very last thing said administrative assistant, but it was like, that's the bottom level.
Number 98,
Yes. And I was like, this explains everything. This explains it, that there is definitely a gift of leadership and there's a gift of administration. And the gift of leadership is what I have, and that focuses more on people and being that shepherding of people, whereas the gift of administration is leading people through all the tiny details and the organizational stuff, and that was not me.
Yeah, you're like, it's not where I flow, it's not where I connect. Well, okay, so it sounds like the issues that you were going through were just not feeling like you fit where you were at the time, feeling unsatisfied with your life, maybe even a little anxiety there. It sounds like if you're going to take a test of what should I do. For me, in the past, when I've taken tests like that, it's usually because I'm anxious about something and need some direction. I'm like, come on, Google, give me a test to tell me what to do, which isn't a bad thing, but I notice when if I'm feeling anxious, that comes up. And
well, I like what you just said. You felt like you didn't fit, and it's like, that's exactly what it felt like. I didn't belong. I didn't belong anywhere. I didn't belong as a pastor's wife. I didn't belong as the administrative assistant's wife. I didn't really belong in the cop world. Well, I can't belong in the cop world. I'm not the cop. So that one, I just play the supportive role and go, hee-haw, go for it, but I didn't belong anywhere.
Wow. Yeah. And for all of us who are either currently or have been in that boat, I mean, we get to see Kristen with us today of now you're fully belonging and you have dreamed up. Now this is her, I'm going to call her third startup business, because you moved across the state or a country, and planted a church, and then you planted a nonprofit that's still going. And now you've started up the Abbi Project. And so through all of the identity battles that you faced and overcome, now we get to be with you today. So
that's right.
It is encouraging. It's like, okay, we have evidence right here that things have to stay. So then I'm going to ask you, for all of us listening, how would you define identity then?
I would define identity as it's this sense of, person that you are your identity is made up of belief systems. It's made up of the questions of who am I, what matters to me, where do I belong, what gives my life meaning. And God has made us each unique individuals, and I call it the DNA, God's DNA within us. And for coaching, I love to do an identity piece in which we're doing a lot of just doing the personality test. We do a various different kinds of personality tests. We do 3 different ones that shine a spotlight in all different directions. We go into core values. We go into even your name definition. That one blew me away when I first did it. And my name actually reflected everything that I had been doing in my life, and I had no idea. And I've seen it time and time again working with other people, and we get to their name definition. So much of it is parallels their life, and it's just like and that's what I mean by God's DNA. He says, I have called you by name. Well, in that name, I really believe you can find your purpose, and that's your identity.
I don't know if you remember this, but it popped up. I know that we've done some of our trainings over the years, or various churches that we've been at different ones that have you do a dive into your name. But even I remember you made these really intense, intricate scrapbooks for Anna and I, which I know you did not enjoy the process. And she warned me. I was trying to make one for my oldest son. She's like, Abbi, don't do it. It's not what it looks like. You have to pick out all those stickers. They're not just in there. All the font, all the markers. Oh, she was right. But
it's horrible.
Yes. But I actually remember on the front of my baby album, you and Dad had put down my whole name meaning. And I do actually remember what they used to do with us growing up is sometimes when we'd come up against a conflict of like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to deal with this insert middle school situation. Lots of those. They would point us back to our names. And do you remember doing that? You would point us back to our names. And so I have watched, through my whole childhood, you really valued name meanings. And then even when we came up to the point where we were naming our own kids, my husband and I remembered back like, wow, my parents got to bring me back to the name meeting and be like, this was part of who you are. So now I get to pick a name where I'm going to be able to reflect that back to my child. So name definitions, even before all the testing, like I've noticed that's been a huge part of how you've parented and even mentored people in the past.
Well, it's such a legacy to give to your kids. And I think what really got my attention is at the time, our goal for naming each one of you, how the Israelites, God told them to build up, get the stones out of the Jordan River and set it as a memorial. And so we looked at the names that we were choosing for you as like a memorial to represent those times in our life.
Oh, wow.
And, but the strange thing is that when you guys began to grow up, it was just like, whoa, this isn't just a memorial. These are actually, they're living out their names. It was crazy, and seeing all the events in your life and just seeing how your name actually represents it. For you, for example, Abigail, Father's Joy, Hadassah. I know it means myrtle tree, but when I looked it up, there was victory. Victory. And in your life, out of all the kids, you're the one that had a lot of health problems that you had to overcome and have victory. And we got to see that every step of the way. And so your name helped us remember that God was already going to give you victory over these health things. And so it brought a lot of peace to us.
And I remember going through those times too. And if you share about it, but I remember going through those times as well. And you guys reflecting back and be like, wait, no, God has given you victory as part of your inheritance in this life. And I don't know. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but she's tearing up.
Right.
No. I can't tear up too. But yes, it's been very wonderful to see. Mm-hmm. So if we're going from identity of you ask yourself the questions, the answers to questions like, who am I? Going through the name meeting, digging into like what matters to you. Are there other things, like, are there ways that identity, let me rephrase this. How does identity show up in your life? Like, are there decisions that are directly affected by identity?
Absolutely. Just about every single decision we make is affected by identity. So if somebody, sees themselves as, I'm not worthy, then because of that identity, they may stay in a very toxic relationship in which they're treated very poorly because they believe that's what they deserve because they are unworthy or they're not good enough. Some people may say, I'm not good enough. Well, actually, this was one of mine. I'm not good enough, so therefore I'm not good enough for any jobs. I have to create my own. That was my belief. And until I realized that actually my identity was an entrepreneur. I had an entrepreneurial spirit. That's why
you created your own.
I created my own. It's not because I wasn't good enough. But in my mind, though, in the beginning, that's why I thought I was creating things.
Wow. So it sounds like sometimes when you're in an identity at a loss or an identity confusion, it sounds like you can even get close to the truth, but almost with a bad filter on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it's really hard. I mean, it's very important that we get to the root of that. So that way you can understand who you are and understand why you're doing it. A lot of things form identity, and that would be, your family, upbringing, the culture that you live in, past traumas and events. All of these things can help shape your beliefs, which then shape your identity, and especially even the way you view God will shape your identity. So all of those things contribute to it, and so it's really important as we go along through life, we collect all of these experiences that can lead us to being deceived or having distorted truth. Like you said, there's truth, but yet there was a distortion there, that caused me to think why I was starting jobs.
Oh, wow. And so it sounds like even with that, if you're living life with a distorted sense of self or a distorted identity, would you say that would also impact your mental and emotional health?
Yes, it brings you back to being that lack of belonging, also just feeling isolated or wanting to isolate because you don't feel like you belong anywhere. You don't know who you are. It could also lead into a lot of people pleasing. I don't know who I am, so-and-so wants me to do this. So-and-so is telling me that I need to be doing here. So now you're fulfilling everybody else's sense of identity for you, but you don't have yours. So you're constantly in a state of people-pleasing, which then leads to high anxiety, high unfulfilled expectations, depression. Yeah, you're lost.
Yeah, and then it sounds like with that people pleasing, there's some social anxiety there. And then, the self-isolation. That definitely sounds like a lot of mental health battles that can come up. Yeah. And so would you say it would be easy to get diagnosed with one of those mental health illnesses or struggles and be able to skate past fixing the actual identity problem?
Yes. I do know that counseling, a lot of counselors do identity work, the identity testing, but identity is far greater and far deeper than just a test. All right. Yeah. It's far greater, and it's based off of John 15:5 of I am the vine, you are the branches. If you're abiding in me, you can do nothing without me. So that also means that, great, all right, now I know my identity. How much is it going to change? Well, I have found in working with people that things don't really change for them so much until they change their view of who God is.
Oh, wow.
So our identity is connected to God's identity. So if God's identity is distorted, our identity will be distorted. So we can't just leave it at personality tests. We have to go further and dig a lot deeper.
Which actually, I'm glad you brought that up. I've noticed sometimes it can be hard to take an accurate personality test because you're taking the test off of how you view yourself as. So for example, for all of you who are familiar with the Bible, there's spiritual gifts that people can have. And sometimes churches will have you take like spiritual gift testings. A few different churches I've been at have done that. And so I take this test, and every single time I've taken a spiritual gifts test, I would say my number one spiritual gift never pops up.
Yeah.
And why is that? Because when I'm seeing the questions related to it on the screen, my thought is, no way. Like, or when I took them before, this was a few years ago, my thought would be, no way, I can't answer this that way because I know what it will produce. And I would still hope, come on, produce it. And then I've even had people, after getting the results, just assume, oh, okay, you're wrong. You don't actually have that gifting. It's like, no, I just didn't answer because my view of self and like the giftings that God gave me was skewed at the time. And so I like how you bring up, you can't just go, oh, this is what it said and stick with it.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. Because personality tests can be, people can twist it. They can answer it according to what they want it to say or what they think they'll say.
Yeah.
We have to come into a place of, I really want to know, and I'm going to take this based upon, being honest with ourselves in that moment, but then going further with it. And then also accepting it. A lot of times people will look at it and like you said, oh, no, this can't be it.
Yep.
It's like, well, there has to be a time where you can believe the truth about yourself.
Wow.
If anyone had told me that I was an entrepreneur back in, my college years, I would have laughed. But no, that's not me. There was a time that I had to go, this is me, and I need to embrace it.
Yeah.
And accept it.
And after you embraced it, there was that huge shift. It's almost like life got lighter. I mean, granted, I would say your workload, cranked up. If y'all know an entrepreneur, you know what I'm talking about. Everything, there's no 9 to 5. You don't have a specific work schedule. Everything is flowing around all the time, but life got lighter.
It's more fulfilling, that's for sure. It's a lot more fulfilling, except for technology.
Oh, yeah. You're like an entrepreneur in 2026 means lots of technology.
It's not my identity, people.
Yeah.
So
So it sounds like then identity would also influence, would you say, your purpose?
yes, identity influences my purpose. So if I don't know what my identity is, I'm not going to know my purpose. And I'll be always living somebody else's life because they're dictating to me what my purpose is. Hey, you're going to be an administrative assistant rather than a discipleship coordinator, and it's just, they put me in the wrong spot. So living up to other people's and what their needs were without them trying to find out really who I was very detrimental. So if you're a boss, you really have to listen to a person's dreams, a person, watch their eyes, see them light up, and then you find a position for them that will light them up because you'll get long-term longevity out of the person. But if you just place them wherever you need them, you're doing yourself actually a disservice and them as well.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's a good point. Yep.
Yeah.
Because it's like God made people with all kinds of giftings. Just find the one with the gifting for what you're needing for your business or your church or whatever it is, because He made them.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
But don't be trying to shift other people into what you want them to be made as.
Exactly. And
It
just affects so much. Yeah. And then also identity, if you have that sense of purpose, you know exactly who you are, you're going to become more resilient. So life is always going to bring about change. It's always going to bring about transitions. But if you know where you're going and you know who you are, those things you can overcome. You can overcome the change and the transitions because your identity will stay the same. Okay, what you do from that identity might change with the transition, like pastor's wife, cop's wife, executive director to founder of Abbi Project. What I do might change, but my identity through all of it has stayed the same. Now that I know it.
Now that you know it.
Now that I know it.
And
it stays the same.
The beautiful part is that you had been living out pieces and beginning to kind of get hints of pieces of your identity that were there the whole time. So you can still have identity under wraps, but it's so wonderful when you get to fully unwrap that and get to walk out confidently. And would you say that fully knowing your identity has actually allowed you to boldly and confidently walk in your life?
Absolutely. A complete turnaround. Before I was people-pleasing, filled with anxiety, lost, and now I have direction, I have confidence, I have boldness, and I know who I'm about. I know who God made me to be. I know what my purpose is, that He has, His plans for me, and I'm grounded. I'm not flying here, I'm not flying there. The Bible talks about in Joshua, go straight. Don't veer to the left or to the right. And that's when you know your identity, you can go straight. No matter what life throws at you, you can just continue on that path without going, I got to move over here. I got to move over there. Yeah.
Which is so wonderful, because I think we all are tired of going back and forth. So if you appreciated learning about identity today, go ahead and stay tuned for our next week's episode. Thank you so much, Kristen, for sharing some of your story and for chatting with us about what identity is and what it impacts. I know for me that was really helpful to understand and begin learning through all of our research processes on identity of, wow, all these things in my life can be impacted and shaped by my own identity and by how I view God, and I didn't even know it. And so we would just love to encourage y'all to join us with our next episode. And also feel free to check out our business at www.abbiproject.org if you're interested in learning more about Kristen's story or who we are and what we do.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Before you go, if this episode spoke to you, take 30 seconds and share it with someone who may be seeking identity healing. Also, please leave a quick review for the show on Apple Podcasts. It really encourages us to know this podcast is helping you. And friend, don't just listen and move on. Sit with it. Let it challenge you. Let it shift something in you this week. Stay rooted in truth, because that's where your real identity is. And I'll meet you back here for the next episode.